Well, okay, I am so excited to be moderating today's panel with these incredible, fierce women. Hello, hello, hello.
Oh, good afternoon, good morning, everyone.
Hey.
It is such
Hello.
it is such a beautiful day. I'm excited to be with all of you. So I want to start out by, if everybody can tell us who you are, a little bit about your organization, and a fun icebreaker fact about you. So I'll kick us off. I'm Marti Allen-Cummings. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I am a drag artist and a political organizer. And a fun fact about me is my favorite animals are pigs and orcas.
Nice. I remember that Free Willy movie back in the 90s.
Yeah. That's my little fact. So why don't we start with you, Aryah?
Thank you.
Introduce yourself.
First off, my name is pronounced like Mariah, but without the M, so it's
I apologize.
No,
I apologize.
It's fine. Now everyone knows. But yeah, I was born in New York. I started my advocacy there, and as was stated, I started the first transgender organization from Miami-Dade County, and now I do a lot of national work. We did a rapid response fund for Black trans communities last year, raised over $500,000. And that is due to work at the Transgender Strategy Center, a national consulting firm of just trans smarties that are there for diversity, inclusion, capacity building, and technical assistance. Fun fact for me, I'm also a sign language interpreter, so that's something that not too many people know, but yes. I'll pass it over to Diamond since she's right over here.
Yes.
So I'm so glad to see y'all beautiful voices, hear your beautiful voices and see your beautiful faces. So I am the executive director of Black Trans Women's Inc. I have been involved with this organization since the beginning, since the beautiful Carmarion Anderson founded this and led it for so many years. And it's just has been a part of my growing when it comes to activism. We center Black trans women. We are focused on creating actual survival mechanism for them to survive these times. And we've been into more of like a conference activism advocate space, but now we're going into more direct services. And so that is our goal, to actually create sustainability and survival mechanisms for us to actually deal with what's going on in the world. My fun fact is, I guess that I'm a YouTuber. I don't know if the people don't know that, but I am a YouTuber. And I was one of the first Black trans YouTubers to become a partner with YouTube when it was an invitation only thing. Now anybody can do it, but I started in 2008. And I've grown to now, and yeah, I love creating content for the internet to educate people.
And Carmarion?
Well, awesome. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for this opportunity and for this organization making spaces for our voices. Certainly is needed. And so just a little bit about me. My bio was very self-explanatory. I am fierce, I'm bold, I'm Black, I'm beautiful, but more importantly, I like to see change. I like to see the change I want to see in the world. And these ladies that are along with me, we have been on the front line doing that. And so, outside of working for HRC, the Human Rights Campaign located in DC, I'm honored to serve actually as the Alabama State Director. So I run all of the efforts of this organization, 40-year-old organization, 3 million members and supporters. We're the oldest LGBTQ civil rights organization. And what a huge responsibility being the first, trans person of color to be in tier leadership as a senior staffer and to be placed in Alabama. you know, we can have a whole conversation about that. But it's been actually remarkable. On top of the work that Diamond is fiercely doing with Black trans women under Black Trans Advocacy Coalition. That was my baby. It was a need for Diamond is right. She was one of the original board members. She's the one that kept me on my toes. And just to see how the transition from one leadership, when it's time for new leadership, we get a Diamond who is just taking it to a whole nother dimension. So that's my personal thank you for Diamond as I continue to evolve and grow in being the beacon where my purpose, I feel the creator and the divine has called for me to be. I guess a fun fact about me is you know, I am a history maker. I think this is my fourth. I think I just hit my fifth one. So I was able to keep my standings in my Pentecostal denomination as clergy. So I am a clergy woman in the Pentecostal Christian faith. So sometimes that's remarkable for those because oftentimes we as the trans-identified community sometimes leave our places of faith because of the rejection. And I have been coined by Bright Divinity as a trans theologian. So it's a wonderful opportunity. And the fifth history making, last week I got the privilege to actually end the Easter service White House program in prayer, which also allowed my community to make history as someone of trans experience to be able to participate in a White House event such as spiritual as it was. And all of that is for our community. We sacrifice our visibility to make sure that we are included and we are able to build allyship and co-conspirators because there is more of them and less of us. But when we come together, we're so powerful. And I'm excited about the conversation that we're going to be having today.
Yes, well, I'm so honored to be with the three of you. You're so major, and it's a joy to join you. So we heard your fun facts and some of your experience. I'd love to dive into the questions. You know, trans rights have come a long way, and obviously we're seeing a lot of anti-trans legislation across the country, most recently in Arkansas, what's going on down there. But where do you see trans rights a year from now or 5 years from now or 10 years from now?
Well, I can like frame this, and I know Carmarion, that's her bread and butter. So I know that she'll give us the meat of that. But I just had a meeting earlier this week. I believe there's around 70 different legislative policies that are out there in the country that are 2/3 of which are attacking transgender people or trying to erase trans people. And only about 30% of those are positive attributes to our community and to society as a whole. And what I've seen is that most of these are occurring within the South. And I think that when we're looking at conservatism, along with, you know, as Carmarion touched upon, certain ideals and principles in different faith institutions, and then when you just layer the racial injustice that we see within the South, I think that within the next years, the battleground for our rights, for our existence as human beings is in the South currently, and will continue to be in the South, because that's where most of the work needs to happen. That's where we see the most disparities, not only for trans Black women, but for Black women in general. Mm-hmm. And so I think that is something that we all need to be looking at on this division of that Dixie line from centuries ago that even now we're still dealing with the effects of, along with male patriarchy and chauvinism and all of that coupled on top of it, that just creates a negative environment for these types of legislations to thrive.
Yeah, you know, and from the work that I do with the Human Rights Campaign, and certainly when we speak about these anti-transgender bills that we're seeing pop up nationwide, you know, unfortunately, I'm happening to be on the front line fighting in Alabama because they certainly showed up here. And Diamond is right. We are seeing these pop up in the South, you know, with 105 specific anti-transgender bills just this year in 2021. And we have to set the framework. Why are we seeing this? It's a retaliation. People are mad, because our vote and our voices do count, who we want to be our leader of this United States. This certainly is being packaged in a way of really discriminating and visually attacking the most marginalized of our constituents in the United States, which happens to be our trans population and even further our youth, and shame on them. And so what we're seeing is this is a blatantly premeditated attack for them to score political points. And it's just unfortunate that it is happening to our transgender youth. Certainly us that are trans-identified and adults, we have lived this. All of us have, we're elders in our community, so we can tell you some stories of what we've seen. And so when you get something that's targeting the youth, which are very vulnerable, then the challenge comes in is how do we fight these levels of attacks or whatnot? Because this GOPs, feel that they have the right answer. And the right answer they're promoting is misinformation about the trans-identified community. Anytime you ask any
Did Carmarion's sound cut out?
Yes, I thought it was just me. Carmarion, we lost you somehow.
Okay, am I back in?
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
Okay. I didn't hear y'all either. Okay.
You said if anybody, your last point was if anybody asked something.
Yes. So lawmakers, when we're asking them in our opposition, have you met someone that's trans-identified, yet alone a youth or a parent of a trans youth? Have you sat in a support group meeting? And it's no. But these bills are still moving as fast on a no. And that's a conversation about how privilege do take the lead for those communities who don't have access. And I think the other final piece that I will share, what we're seeing is an attack on our trans youth around being able to play in sports that is in their comfortable and noun gender that they represent. And there's misconception as it relates to, like they have an upper hand or, because of if it's a male assigned at birth who now say that they're a female, they're on puberty blockers, that, they have an advantage, which, we have to understand the science behind the medication. They don't have an advantage. If anything, they have a disadvantage to that. And then, of course, the attacks on the medical ban for our anti-trans youth, and shame on them. You're taking something that is so needed, as it relates to their medical needs, not just from gender affirmation care, but you're taking the support as it relates to physical, mental, or brain health, as I like to call it, and the environment of support that is needed for our youth. And so these are blatantly discrimination bills that we are seeing that's targeting our trans youth. And what happens is in that rhetoric transfer into making opportunities and resources available for the trans community, such as workplace, such as housing, such as, furthering education. So those resources, and if we don't nip this on the bud now, then therefore it is going to hurt us in the long run. But I got good news. We're not going anywhere. We're going to fight. We have made it thus far. Remember, we were the first one to throw the heel and made change, for diversity and inclusion. So to answer your question, where do I see in the future? We have a promising future. We really do. We have more allies and co-conspirators that may not voice that they are for whatever reason, but they're working behind the scenes, or they're doing their part to uplift our voices. We have trans-led organizations like Black Trans Advocacy Coalition, Black Trans Women, and the Strategy Center. We have these businesses that are being invested in compensation of someone's presence. Everyone is going to have to do our part if we're going to live and thrive. The easiest way I can say this is that look at me. You should be able to see yourself. This is a human issue that we're having. And I dare us be able to segregate our trans babies out of what we define as humans.
Thank you so much, Carmarion. Diamond, do you have any thoughts on this?
Absolutely, and I feel like we're hopeful because we have seen this time and time again over time. I came out in '95, a whole different area of time. We were still searching through yellow pages and white pages to find doctors and stuff. So we didn't have the internet. We didn't have this kind of sense of community that we have now. And we didn't even have the visibility that we have now. So I think I've seen them attack us on so many occasions, but I also have seen us being erased from the beginning of the beginning of fights when they actually happen. When we talk about D. Farmer in the Farmer versus Brenham case, that trans woman being raped in a prison led to the PREA Act, which led to the Violence Against Women Act. This one person being centered in our laws led to so many people being protected in the prison system. That's one thing that people don't talk about, and it's erased. When we talk about Christie Littleton in Texas, when her husband was accidentally killed by his doctor, and she was trying to get rights and sue them for malpractice. The marriage equality fight was started with a trans woman. Not started, but she was one of the early cases. When we talk about Lucy Hicks Henderson in California in the 30s, they were questioning her marriage. So we always see trans women, although erased from the narrative, we always see our stories at the forefront of any fight. And at the end of the day, we always win because science, because morals, because of everything is going to be on our side at the end of the day. Because our humanity, you can't deny it. That's what we are. You're going to see what our needs should be at the center when it comes to our citizenship, when it comes to our care, when it comes to our medical. Everything should be at the center. Our humanity should be at the center of it. And they can't stop that. Eventually, it's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, listening to you all speak about this, like there are so many, like we were talking about, history shows that trans women have been at the forefront of this movement for equality. And with all these bills that are negative, like there is hope on our side because like you all have shared, we're not backing down. We're not getting silent. If anything, we're getting louder because like we've talked about, our kids' lives are at stake now. They're attacking children, and it's really, the movement moves on. So I want to tie the next two questions because we kind of touched on this. I want to tie the next two questions a little bit together. We're talking about, systemic, oppression that's been a part of our country for since the beginning of our country, right? So the Williams study, or the Williams Institute has said that LGBTQIA plus people of color are more likely to be living in poverty. So what do you all see as the connection between wealth and the Black and brown LGBTQ plus experience? And then I also want to tag on because, we're talking about the movement forward and visibility. In recent years, we've seen in the media more visibility with shows like Pose and Disclosure. So how do you think those programs have tied into the fight for trans liberation and the movement forward?
Well, just like you said, or what was stated, that the trans women were the start of movements, were also the center of it. Because especially if you look at what we see represented here, which are Black women of transgender experience, sit at the very center. Because when you look at the race, right, and Black is at the bottom, that cannot be overstated at all. And then when you look at feminism and the attack of feminism that's been going on for decades, since the 1920s, still trying to fight for equity as a woman. And then lastly, with our trans experience, and when you're putting xenophobia and miseducation, as Carmarion said, and you're coupling that up with what people see generally for the trans population, is why you see that when we say the liberation of a Black trans woman is the liberation of everyone, because we sit at the center of all the intersectionalities that we're seeing right now, be at the forefront of politics, the forefront of our societal conversations. And what we need to do is bring that into the forefront of our kitchen tables, to our families, at our family reunions, you know, at our workplaces, when we're going out getting something to eat and hear some disparaging comment. Like, and that's where the positive visibility actually helps, like Pose. I like Pose because it centers the Black and brown transgender woman as well, you know. And for the longest time, the only positive portrayals we saw were from white people. And so now we're seeing more of a celebration of our skills and our attributes and what we're able to actually give society as leaders, as teachers, as role models, and as unapologetic Black women as well. And so what we need to do is be brought into all of these movements, knowing that we're the center of those.
I also think that, you know, we have to, we celebrate visibility because it gives anybody who feels alone a beacon of light in that darkness, and that's totally integral to actually moving forward and coming out, you know, feeling like that you can be successful. That's beautiful. But if I can see these beautiful trans women on the screen and I can still be living in a tent. I can see these beautiful trans women who are successful and celebrities now, but I can still be on the verge of getting abused and beat or killed by my intimate partner. I still can have these problems as a lay person in the world. So we have to definitely be more creative and be more intentional about actually creating mechanisms in our work and in our environment that can actually be utilized, because visibility can't necessarily be utilized for my survival. So we have to actually make sure that in our work that it's grounded in actually creating space for trans women to get jobs, trans women to earn a livable wage, trans women to actually have a place to stay, to have health care, to have the necessities that they need, not just that we can't survive off just that beacon of light. And I want to make sure that's very clear. Visibility is important, but it has to be things that we can use to survive within our work.
Absolutely.
I want to just kind to answer it in a different framework because I can't add to what they've already added that I co-sign on. But I think it's important for our audience to understand that there was a system and it does work. Okay. There was a system before, you know, like Diamond and I and us, you know, who got these 20 plus years, where, you know, before there was even dial-up, AOL, you know, we survived. Okay. But the system works. When we speak about trans liberation, we speak about the trans community, we will default generally sometimes to trans women, particularly Black trans women. Because why? Because we have the highest rate of violence upon, you know, our genre of our community. We're being murdered, you know, at a high 44 last year. And that may not be even fully accurate if it was, you know, the way things are reported. The reason I'm bringing all of this framework, because when we speak about transgender liberation, you know, and when we speak about people of color, Black, Latinx, what it is instilled in us from culturally, and now this is where my other fun fact hat, is the spiritual side that is keeping us being able to resurrect past the discrimination hurt that we got in our teaching through culture. And it's important for me to share that because we, as a Black or a person of color community, you know, and I'm from the South, but we migrated from the South and start going up to the Midwest and start going to the West Coast. That didn't change how our real culture was. And we were taught that anything outside of binary, male or female, is a sin, period. So now you have culture that we was reared in telling us that if we transition to who we say we are, then therefore we may be telling our culture, our spirituality, our deity that they made a mistake. And I just want to encourage our listeners, when we speak about trans liberation, what we're speaking about is the power that was created in us that cannot be taken away from these laws or from discrimination or from our culture. If truth be told, if anybody who subscribed to the way they were created by the divine, you know, we were all born, as, you know, some Christian scripture will say, and other teachings, we were all born not polished. We wasn't born perfect. And there's a reason why we have the beliefs we do in regards to changing the narrative of how we were born. But then we also need to look at that. If that is the case of the divine, then therefore what you see in front of me, if you believe in that model or in that culture that you were in, then therefore how come you can't believe that this is the work of my own purpose? And trans liberation says that we have the power. We can share our narrative. And really, honestly, we're fighting this hard because people don't even include us at the tables where it's needed. They don't think that we're real. They say that, you know, this is just a face. You don't know any of that unless we continue to have conversations like this where others can get educated. When we look at polls and all the wonderful media things that we see, that is to help counteract people's minds, to let them know that this is another narrative. It also embeds you into the culture because the ballroom scene in Pose came from Black church. Created, when they got kicked out, we'll create our own form of church, and we'll have ball. We want to be able to celebrate. That's liberation. And so I think for the audience is that how do you help us promote our liberation? Is make us visible. Share your thoughts about us. Share what you've learned about us. Share your empathetic thoughts about us. Share when you see the next trans person get murdered. Weigh in and say, I cannot believe, call out the rhetoric and the misinformation. That's how we are going to move trans liberation. The final piece I'll say, because I got excited, the last piece I'll say is that if people will focus a little bit more on us, and I'm not saying that to have a privilege to call our community out, but we are the blueprint to help other communities and help our society move to the next level where we need to be. We are the most vulnerable population in society. And if we can get it right with this vulnerable population, then any other population, we now have a clear blueprint, just like what President Biden is doing. He's coming in and making sure that we all, diverse people, have a seat at the table of decisions.
Yeah. Y'all are fire, okay? This is so, I think this is so helpful and informative for our viewers. And I just want to point out, Carmarion, what you had talked about a little earlier in your answer there about how, we hear in the news of trans women being murdered, but those numbers I don't think are accurate, because I think the number's higher because police departments or medical examiners or doctors misgender, and that's like, so we're only getting part of the story. So the visibility and getting, people, like you say, when we hear about these murders, to speak up and so we can combat this. And this is, thank you all for your sharing all of this. I want to jump, before we get back into the questions I have here, I'm going to jump over to, we have some questions from the audience. Millie has asked, Diamond, you had talked about, coming out in the 90s when we're still flipping through the phone book, and who were some of your mentors or allies when you all were first coming out, who kind of like helped influence and shape you in your work and life?
Hey, Millie. So one of the things that in my particular life, a story that I tell people is this is exactly how my life has, in any moment of trial, it is always Black women, particularly Black trans women, who have stepped up to help me in need when I was, in need. I remember when I first came to Houston, I was homeless with $57 in my pocket. And I couldn't stay at the cisgender women's shelter because I wasn't a cisgender woman. I couldn't stay at the men's shelter because they said I was a liability, and if to come stay there, I had to take these girls off. They can't come off. So the this is the breaker though. This is the one. I also could not stay at the LGBT shelter because I wasn't HIV positive. So where was I supposed to go? All the infrastructure that is set up for homeless people to care for people. I couldn't go to church, the place that's supposed to be helping for food and shelter morally. I couldn't go to a church. I couldn't go to the city funded places. There was no place that I could go. You know what I did? I was on Black Planet in a chat room talking. I didn't do this intentionally. I was just in there, and a girl asked me, "Where did I stay? Where did I get my body work done?" Blah 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 blah. And I told her, and she was like, "Oh, well, can you take me to go get some body work?" And I was like, "Oh, girl, I'm kind of in a situation right now. I can't really. I can do it when I get in the situation, when I get out of my situation. But I'm kind of in a situation where I don't got a place to stay." Da, da, da. She said, "Girl, where you at?" And I said, "Oh, I'm in Houston." No. At the time, I was in Mississippi. And I was like, "I'm in Mississippi, but I don't, I got to figure out where I'm going to stay." And she was like, "Girl, you can stay with me." Literally, don't know this lady from Adam, met her in a chat room. I ended up moving to Houston where she stayed and slept on her couch for a month. That time, of course, I got into my hustle bag, my survival sex work bag, and I started making money to be in that month. She was not charging me anything. In that month, I was able to make enough money for me to get into my own apartment, get me my place furnished, and actually have a foothold in creating a life for me. And that one little act of some strangers, this good Samaritan care from a trans woman. It wasn't a Black trans woman, it was a Latina trans woman. And that one little act of care led me to what you see today. And this is all of this is anything that has happened in my life. It has led to that one person really just giving me a chance and really just opening up whatever. If she wasn't rich, she was just as poor as I was, but she had a couch. And so when I think about, for me, that's what I try to do. I've had so many people sleeping on my couch, sleeping on pallets that we done made, sleeping. I try to do my best to be that same person to somebody else. And so my mentors are my sisters, are my queer Black women who hook me up with jobs, my gay men who have hooked me up with some type of connection with anything. My community is what saves me. My community are my mentors and allies. Those are the ones. It's not some big person that I look for. No, it is people who are on the same level as me, helping me get to where I am today. That's what it is for me.
That's like what Carmarion said. That's why we're the blueprint and we're the solution. Because I transitioned in the late 90s too. I was like 19 years old, and we didn't have any human rights ordinances. Like, we didn't have any aspirations, even personally. I remember myself and the girls that I was around, the highest altitude that we can think of achieving was to be like a receptionist at like a law firm or something. And that was like, okay, you've made it, girl, right? And look where we're at now. And we got there without protections, without rights. And it was only because of community. Like, we had to build ourselves up. We had to build out thick skin. Like the same person that taught me about the trans community and what being trans means and how to paint my face, was the same person that would come home drunk and sexually assault me. We still dealt with so many different things, like Diamond. Like I couldn't get a job. I tried everywhere, and the only place that would hire me was the stroll, and that's where we go and do sex work. Or, my friends bringing me to the club where they worked at and they stripped and could get dates. And that was my platform as well. And look at where that platform has gotten us, And now that we do have a lot of more rights within different municipalities, an actual president that publicly supports us, and so many different programs and organizations like the ones that we lead, and that we really are at the forefront of, these are the things that are needed. This is the support that's needed. And we need to feed into community with funds, with opportunities, with resources, because that's the way that has made us thrive.
And I guess I'll just add, I think there are some principles that I've learned along the way that I would love to share, like Diamond and Aryah. I'm a 90s transition as well, on top of also being a teen parent. There's just so much, on top of having an identical twin brother, on top of my daddy and mama being the pastors, of the neighborhood or the state church, as I like to call it. And one of the things that I realized is that there was not a definition to define what I was going through at that time. Again, I deep South, never knew anyone at transition. We had other names for anything that was gruesome of discrimination. There was either, you were a gay male, as they will say, that was a sissy, or you were a lesbian female who they used to call a bull dyke or a bulldozer, as my great grandmother would say. And I'm like, okay, neither of that definition fit me. So what happened is that I was able to find the best appropriate way for me to define who I was. And the easiest way is that I am who I say I am, which is I'm Carmarion. There's nothing else different about me, and what I got from being able to justify to, my community that did not understand what was going on the out of my appearance is a few things. When I was in my early 20s, or really while I was in college, my first history making, being a female identified cheerleader who happened to be a woman of trans experience and being a captain for 2 years, or being able to go work in public health and be deemed as the first trans identified in leadership in a public health HIV initiative, and so forth and so forth. One is that I learned how to stay at tables that I knew was not prepared for me. Barely got an invitation, and perhaps I probably made my own invitation to get to the table. I learned from getting in those tables that I had to have tough skin and not get sensitive around things that I knew that was blatantly discriminating myself and now people that I'm realizing who are like me. Rather, I sat there, I learned the table, I learned what was the conversation was happening, and at the right time, I was able to start preparing my advocacy voice and share with them, not in an attitude way. I didn't get sensitive. I'm not a victim at this table. And so being able to share with them, some more education based off my lived experience and the social network and the community that I am now living in, I was able to do that. The other piece I learned is that you do get a better response, and there are greater outcomes for us that are trans identified when we can show up to be counted. I think that's important. I learned that, and that has carried me along the way. And then the other final piece that I'll say is that I do not have to fight to give you to tell you or convince you about who I am. If anything, you need to get permission to know about me, and that permission comes with dialogue, communication, asking questions, and making myself available. I will not have an attitude with people because I'm realizing what they think they know, they don't know because they haven't taken the time to educate. So I have to be in a position in either a leadership role or just being an elder in our community, and still befriend them in a way where I can pour education to them and not walk away with an attitude or angry and continue to say, you're just being, discriminatory or X, Y, and Z, all the negative that comes to us, and be mindful that every person that I touch is a target for me to educate. And those are some of the things I learned early on because I was willing to show up to be counted and sit in arenas that was not prepared for me. But at the end of the day, I re-prepared them to let them know that after me, someone else is coming, and they were better off for that.
Let me add
What's
this.
the term called call out with the intention of calling in?
Absolutely.
Be creative in your mindset, in your strategy of actually being support. And this kind of leads into the other question that's in the chat. One of the key things that I learned from people is, as far as supporting us, do what you can in your circle or area of expertise. Let me give you a perfect example. So I'm a podcast host. We have one of our listeners who is the actual world crossword puzzle champ. Like, he holds the title. Do you know what he did? He actually works as an editor for the crossword puzzle for the USA Today. And he actually made our podcast name one of the answers on the puzzle on a Sunday. Now, this is his expertise. This is what he does. And so he literally thinking outside the box. Look, this is what I do. I ain't got no money. I'm not rich. I'm not da-da-da. I can't just throw money at the problem. But what I can do with what my platform is, which is this crossword stuff, I can make you visible in the way that I can. And you don't know how many people, older people who sitting at home on Sunday doing their crossword puzzle, an older white man hit me up on Twitter and said, I found out about y'all through doing my crossword puzzle this morning, and I started listening, and I'm learning so much that I didn't know about the trans community. And he donated $150 to our podcast. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I mean. Like, it's not necessarily, you got to be rich and send us $50,000. Now, if you got that, go ahead. But you don't have to. Just meet us where you are. Show us what show us what resources, and resources is not necessarily money. Sometimes it's a network. Sometimes you got an extra bed at your domestic violence shelter that you can actually go outside the box and give it to a trans woman who's going through that. Whatever you can do at your job, are you actually reaching out to trans people to get them to come and apply? Can you change the application where it's not asking just male, female? Is it asking for a different, is your application welcome, where I feel like I'm safe at this job in applying for this? Does your company policy show that this is a safe location? We are doing what we can do to make you safe at our company. Like, those little things really, really matter. And if you have the power in any situation in your circle, it could be your church home, is your church little group reaching out to the trans community to come to Bible study. Whatever you are doing, whatever power you have in your circle, use that. Don't think that, oh, I ain't got no money to help this. Use your power, your circumstance, to determine what you can provide to this movement for trans liberation.
And go beyond just the minimal too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, go beyond those EEOC guidelines. Like, is your HR and management, like, are they actually cognizant, and are all of the policies inclusive of someone that may be transient, without a steady home, at that moment, while they're trying to bring themselves up within the organization? Are you trauma informed, and knowing how certain things can trigger certain people because of the lives that they had to live, with the inequities that they've had to face? And so it's doing more than just the minimum, doing more than just the normal, because we've been left behind for so many years that it's going to take more than just a handout or a here you go, type of thing. It's going to take effort. It's going to labor, and it's going to hurt. And that's what I always tell people: if you want to be an ally, if it doesn't hurt either your pocket or put yourself out in a situation to where people are like, oh, that's a trans advocate, and they're looking at you a different way, then you're not really doing enough.
Facts.
I just want to step in. Sorry. I just want to say, ladies, I'm so sorry. My computer went crazy and
we
shut
got
down.
you. We got you. We got you. Welcome back.
My computer is very old, and she decided to take a nap for a minute, so I apologize.
That's okay. We're having a really good conversation about what people can do at work to support us that are trans identified, gender non-conforming, and so forth. And Diamond and Aryah has responded, and I wanted just to add that when we speak about when we speak about respect in a workplace for me who's trans identified is calling me by the name that I share with you, respecting my name and pronoun. Now I'm gonna throw something in there because we still have the habit of, what is your preferred pronoun? What is your preferred name? And I need us to move past that, because there's nothing preferred about who I am. Okay. It will probably do good practice that on your signatures at the bottom of your email, or when you're introducing yourself in a work meeting, say your name and say your own pronouns. Model that to make it a brave space and not just a welcoming space, because those are two different things. Your intentions may be great when you say you're welcoming, but the actions behind it did not amount to how we define what welcoming is. But if you create a brave space, that leaves room for circle accountability of grace, which means that you can just apologize, get it right, and move on, and we're all happy. So calling, the name, the chosen name that they're sharing with you, pronouns, including pronoun signatures when you are verbally introducing yourself, or on your email signature, creating a ERG group. So trans-identified individuals can have a space of their own, and that's employee resource and gatherings or something like that. But it's an ad hoc group that allows them to know that you're intentional about creating a space that they can speak and support themselves. Bring in HR if they seem like they have a collective concern. Those type of things are really, really great. And then also the final thing I'll say is that make your office as inclusive as possible. If we're celebrating Christmas, and if we're celebrating Easter, and if we're celebrating birthdays, it is okay to look at the calendar and look at these equality days and celebrate that in your office as well. Okay, bring us in because, if we're not in, then what happens is we get ignored, and then there is no next dimension to what you're trying to do. Final piece I'll say is hire us. All of this that we're sharing is not going to be any good if you can't implement it with bodies of trans experienced people who are capable of working, some have gone to school, some have the experience. And this is not a call out or no tea, no shade, as we say, but we got people who went through the struggle and we survived. We have a master's or a PhD in living, which means that whatever you're trying to hire for, I guarantee you we're fast learners, because that has been our life and it continues to be our life. So do no good to get these types of nuggets, but you have no way of implementing it without hiring us. And I will keep saying this. Look at the job description. Look at the qualifications. I'm gonna be honest with you. If we all may not have an undergrad degree and all of that. That does not mean that we're not capable of learning. Don't allow that to actually exclude what you actually need. And then the final piece, and I'm so sorry, this just came to mind. Please just don't hire us to check off a box. We're not hireable to check off your diversity box. We're hired because you're pouring into us and giving us an opportunity. How did I make all of these history makings? Because someone gave me an opportunity and didn't tokenize me and just check the box. And I proved myself until it was time for my next season in mission. And voila, I'm now with HRC. The sky's the limit. but we don't want to be tokenized. We don't want to box check because of diversity. Be intentional about including us. And if you don't know, and if you mess up, just apologize, continue to learn, get it right the next time. The reward will come when someone will say, thank you so much for respecting me.
Absolutely. I want to touch on, talking about pronouns. I don't identify as male or female. I identify as non-binary. That was a long journey of, self-discovery, of knowing when I came out at 14 as a gay man. I was like, well, that doesn't feel right, but that's what everybody's telling me. But then in my 30s, I was able to say, no, this is who I am. I don't fit into this like binary box. And so like having, pronouns on your email header might seem like a small thing, or your email closing, but it actually goes a long way, even for, people who are, I had this great conversation last year. I happened to be invited to meet Kamala Harris, and we talked about pronouns. And she was like, I use my pronouns because I want to make it so people know that it's not preferred pronouns. These are your pronouns. This is who you are. And we need to be having those conversations. I think it's just such an important conversation. And we're wrapping up this talk, but I just want to thank the three of you so much for your time today to speak about these important issues. We have a lot of work still to do, and I'm grateful to have been able to show up and listen and learn from each of you today. I want to give the opportunity. We have 5 minutes. If anybody from the audience had any questions they wanted to pop in here quickly in the chat, if our Zoom moderators see any that they want to throw into the chat for us.
Marti?
Yeah?
While they're waiting, I do want to throw out one toolkit
Sure.
that I'm very proud. I think it was very much, I think they called us our voices to the community to help write this, but it's a resource through HRC. And if people will just Google hrc.org/transgender inclusion in the workplace, there is a toolkit for employers that is already written that gives you how-to steps, gives you HR information. It gives you team environment information. I would love for people to visit that. That will be a great start of use. The transgender inclusion in the workplace. It's a toolkit for employers, and it is free on the hrc.org website.
That's amazing. And I hope that our school systems across the country also adopt these policies of inclusive language and for our faculty and our students. So before we close out, I would love to give everyone the opportunity to tell our listeners, our listeners, we're not on the radio, our viewers today, where they can follow you on social media.
For me on Instagram and Twitter, I'm Aryah L, ARYAHELLE, or Aryah Lester. Our Transgender Strategy Center website is www.transgenderstrategy.org.
Wonderful. Diamond?
I am Diamond Stylz everywhere, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram. Marsha's Plate is my podcast part, my platform. So I'm Marsha's Plate everywhere, Twitter, Instagram. Yes. Before I go, we didn't get to really dive deep into the violence situation, because that is a really pertinent issue. I want to make sure that when you as you hear us speak, that you make it a point to really talk to trans people, because the narrative is that we're out here tricking people and we're out here just prostituting, and that is leading us to our deaths. That is actually not true. Our statistics align with cisgender Black women when it comes to intimate partner homicide. When we talk about that's one of the leading cause of death in Black women, intimate partner homicide. And when we look at the cases, they actually know that we're trans. That's the average scenario when the police actually look and see the connection between the murderer and the girl, they actually know that we are trans, and they are our intimate partners, and not necessarily relationship, but some type of partner that knows that we are trans and we are involved with. So our statistics actually align with cisgender Black women when it comes to who is out here murdering us. So I wanted to make sure say that. But yes, you can find me everywhere as Diamond Stylz, but also my org, blacktranswomen.org. Check us out.
Thank you, Diamond and Carmarion.
And I will be vain to say my name is at the bottom of the screen. Hopefully you can see it. Just Google me. But that's just me being vain. But just Google me. No, but seriously, I am on all social media platforms. If you can't find me with a hyphenated name, just use my maiden name, Anderson, and you will be able to find me. It's a new last name. That's a testament in itself for our trans community, because oftentimes we don't take the next step in the route of privilege of actually, getting a rock on your finger and having someone love us authentically for who we are. So I am proud to be Mrs. Anderson Harvey, but I am on social media, and I look forward to connecting to any person that would like to reach out to learn more about our community and how we can be of further assistance.
Well, thank you all so much. This was
welcome.
This was incredible. I'm so grateful, and let's all spread some goodness and joy into the world, and fight for these kids who are having laws written against them. Thank you all so much. And if anybody on social media wants to follow me, it's Marti G. Cummings. Get up into that Instagram, and thank you all.
Yes, enjoy the rest of the conference, everyone.
Thank you all so much. That was absolutely wonderful. I'd just like to extend a round of applause for this amazing panel. It was so great to learn from all of you wonderful, wonderful humans. So thank you for that.